Simulation theory. It starts with the premise that if civilization and computing power progress on an endless scale, at some point we could develop simulations so enormously complex and realistic that any conscious observer encoded inside would be unable to distinguish it from an organic physical reality. Even if we were in a simulation, we wouldn't be able to know. If beings could create a system so advanced that they could create entire physical laws governing the universe to the biological complexities of life itself, they would have taken steps to ensure that whatever you do would have been predicted before you even thought about it. We might not live in a real universe, but rather a close approximation of one. The bus you took today and the coffee you drank aren't all really there, but just perfect models of one. Think of it this way. How sure are you that the red you see is similar to the red you see? We could be one universe out of thousands in an alien lab to find out what would happen if humans had nuclear bombs, or what would happen if you didn't ask her out. Creationism. Creationism is the belief that the universe and all life within it are created by a supernatural being or divine entity, often identified as God in Abrahamic religions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. According to this view, humans and all living things did not arise through natural processes like evolution, but were created by this divine creator. The birds, the trees, and the world were just willed into existence by this greater being. One of the most well-known creationist accounts comes from the book of Genesis in the Bible, which describes God creating the heavens, the earth, and all plants and animal life in 6 days, with the final creation being that of the first human beings, Adam and Eve, on the 6th day. Many young Earth creationists interpret this literally, believing that the Earth and its life forms were created just a few thousand years ago. But other old Earth creationists think it's more of a symbolic story of how the world came about, with one day equating to any given number of years. Evolution. With this, it comes down to survival of the fittest. This scientific theory claims that all living organisms have gradually changed and developed through natural selection over an extremely long period. Humans did not suddenly appear in their present form, but evolved over millions of years from early primates to what we are now. An important rule you remember is that species better adapted to their environments tend to survive and reproduce, passing on beneficial traits to successive generations through genetic inheritance. To picture it, let us use Darwin's finches on the Galapagos Islands, where different beak shapes allowed finches to take advantage of diverse food sources on the various islands. Although the finches were all the same species, Darwin noticed something interesting. The finches on each island had different beak shapes than finches on other islands. He concluded that hundreds of years ago, the Galapagos Islands were all probably one continuous island with basically the same beak. Now, due to climate change, the sea levels rose and began separating them into many islands. Individuals had mutations with the original set of birds, such as slightly shorter and thicker beaks or longer, slender beaks. The same could be applied to almost every animal on Earth as they evolved to fit that environment. Well, except Australia. Intelligent design. It is more of a philosophical perspective that argues certain features of the universe and living things are best explained by an intelligent cause or designer rather than an undirected, naturalistic process like evolution. As our ancestors often looked at specific aspects of our world, they wondered how this could have happened by chance. Life's systems work together so well they seem more complex than anything humans have made, suggesting to some that this couldn't have happened by chance. The sun's rising, the hexagonal honeycombs that make beehives so accurate, the math that makes inventions happen. It was all too specific. Some believe that evolution can't fully explain how unlikely it is for life to have started by chance. They pointed to aspects of biology that had something called irreducible complexity, meaning that in big systems, removing a single part would cause the entire thing to fail and lose its function. Remove the queen from the beehive and the colony collapses overnight. Panspermia. The theory holds that billions of years ago, before there was any life on Earth, the universe was already teeming with simple microbial organisms. These hardy single-celled life forms managed to survive in the vast hostile reaches of interstellar space where temperatures were sub-zero. Then, one fateful day, a rogue asteroid or comet streaked through a distant cosmic dust cloud, gathering some of these microscopic alien particles and encasing them in a protective crystalline shell. This rock would travel for millions of miles miles and millions of years. Eventually, this tiny arc of extraterrestrial seeds found itself on a collision course with a nondescript planet orbiting a yellow star. As the comet blazed through the atmosphere, the intense heat and friction cracked open its crystal vault, raining down the first life forms onto the sterile, lifeless surface. The microbes almost instantly went to work metabolizing and replicating in their new terrestrial home. Through billions of years of evolution, their descendants diversified into all the plants, fungi, and animals we see around us today, including human beings. Of course, as intriguing as panspermia is, it kicks the ultimate origin question a little further down the road. If life started elsewhere, where did those original alien microbes come from? Multi-regional hypothesis. Though an outdated theory, it thinks that hundreds of thousands of years ago, our ancient human-like ancestors began migrating outward from Africa where they had evolved. They didn't remain isolated populations as they gradually expanded into new territories across Eurasia and beyond. Instead, there was a continuous genetic exchange and inbreeding occurring between the populations of migrating humans as they commingled with more ancient human varieties they encountered along the way, such as the Neanderthals. Under this theory, the emergence of anatomically modern Homo sapiens wasn't the result of a lineage evolving in one particular region before rapidly replacing all other archaic human species across the old world or driving them into extinction. Instead, our modern human origins arose as a gradual evolutionary merging of different ancient human varieties contributing genetic material to the shared ancestor pool. So, rather than having a single modern human genesis point, our species began taking precise shape in a slow, shifting mixing zone spanning hundreds of years across Africa, Europe, and Asia. Biogenesis. Before the 19th century, and before anyone understood where life came from or how it arose, there was a raging debate between two competing schools of thought: vitalism and biogenesis. The vitalists believed that living organisms could spontaneously generate itself from inert, non-living matter through some kind of supernatural vital force or mystical life essence. They pointed to examples like maggots seemingly appearing from rotting meat, or mice materializing among piles of old rags as proof of life spawning from the lifeless. But then there were the biogenists, who made a claim that life can only come from life. They argued that those rotting meat piles and old rags didn't create life from anything, but merely provided fertile breeding grounds for already existing microscopic life forms to thrive undisturbed. The biogenists' radical idea was that every living organism, no matter how seemingly insignificant or primitive, descended from a long, unbroken lineage of ancestors stretching back to the earliest stirrings of life on Earth. Life begets life is an uninterrupted chain. A key moment in the 1660s when an Italian scientist named Francesco Redi performed a famous experiment. He let rotting meat putrefy in two jars, one open to the air and one sealed shut. Maggots appeared in the open jar from eggs laid by flies, but the sealed jar remained free of spontaneous maggot generation. Over the next 2 centuries, mounting evidence from improved microscopes and experiments gradually shifted scientific consensus away from vitalism in favor of biogenesis and the belief in life's unbroken continuity. Of course, biogenesis still needs to solve the ultimate mystery of how the first life arose from inorganic matter, but it would mean that your existence now results from a long, unbroken chain of events lasting billions of years. RNA world hypothesis. Before DNA and proteins were the main acts on Earth, there may have been a much simpler form of life via RNA. In this early intro to biological complexity, simple RNA strands are thought to have self-replicated and even facilitated their evolution through random mutations and selective replication of the fittest RNA varieties. Think of it as molecular Darwinism before evolution had even the chance to begin. It was an RNA world, a prebiotic stage of lifelike chemical evolution before DNA's more elegant double helix assumed the roles of life's instruction manual. It was a time when RNA could do it all as both the blueprint and builder. But this RNA world couldn't have lasted forever. Those primordial RNA strands faced major challenges like limited chemical versatility and an inability to copy lengthy sequences accurately over many generations without making too many errors. It was the molecule equivalent of a maxed-out basic computer mode eagerly awaiting a systems upgrade to unlock its full potential. That's precisely what happened through the gradual evolution evolution of DNA and proteins. Hydrothermal vent hypothesis. If the calendar of the universe were to be compressed into a single year, with the Big Bang kicking things off at midnight on January 1st, our entire recorded human history from the first civilizations to today amounts to no more than the final few seconds of strain before that arbitrary yearly cycle resets. Rewind the timeline from roughly 4 billion years ago to late August in this calendar, and the Earth had just finished cooling enough for stable continental land masses to appear. But the planet's early surface could not hold life, as it was constantly bombarded by asteroid impacts and volcanic eruptions that released toxic gases into an oxygen-free atmosphere. It was hardly an ideal real estate opportunity for budding biology to stake its claim, except perhaps in one marine environment, the hydrothermal vents. Deep beneath the ocean's immense pressures, the chimney-like vents blasted superheated mineral-rich fluids from the roasting rock below. In this constant merging of elemental chemicals, some believe that random collisions of inorganic compounds produced the first organic life. The supposed sequence goes like this. When volcanoes erupt underwater, basic chemicals like methane gather around underwater vents. These vents, full of energy and minerals like iron and nickel, could have helped start life. Over millions of years, these collections of reactive molecules slowly merged into building blocks for more complex polymer strands capable of primitive storage and transfer of coded information. Molecular variants that catalyzed their replication eventually outcompeted less aggressive varieties in these mineral womb environments. These early self-replicating organisms spread out, populating wider marine ecosystems, and through evolutionary processes, gave rise to more complex life forms that eventually led to humans. Organisms like the heat-loving archaea microbes lurking around modern hydrothermal vents may be what that first life looked like eons ago. Lab disease. So we wanted a cure for cancer, and in the process we decided to use a strain of Ebola to be the messenger because of how fast it can infect host cells. But an intern mistake here, an eco-terrorist group steals it there, and we have a recipe for the end of the world. The new highly contagious deadly pathogen emerges able to infect cells even faster because scientists thought it would be a good idea to give the deadly disease steroids. Because it can spread as quickly as through air droplets or skin-to-skin touch, it begins spreading rapidly among the human population through person-to-person transmission. We launch a full-on quarantine as more and more people get sick and begin to develop symptoms of both terminal cancer and Ebola. Even though people are dying on the streets, some people online are skeptical. Are we even sure it's really the Ebola cancer and not just the seasonal flu? Have you guys even really seen someone sick from this? I sure haven't. The skeptics convince even more people online that the whole thing is big pharma propaganda, and soon enough we have a full-on worldwide pandemic. The novel virus proves unresponsive to existing antiviral treatments, and vaccines cannot be developed quickly enough to curb its spread. Healthcare systems become overwhelmed by the surge of critically ill patients and implode in on itself. With a high fatality rate of 25 to 50% or more, the uncontrolled pandemic starts causing millions of deaths across countries, crippling national infrastructures and basic services. Within 1 to 2 years, much of the global population succumbs to the pandemic through direct illness or secondary effects like famine. And just like that, the world's population enters free-for-all, 8 billion to 5 billion in 2 years, then 3 billion because of mass famine and drought, then less than 1 billion as the remaining humans fight for the last scraps of food. Alien invasion. The difference in intelligence between us and the smartest primate is about 90%. Let's consider what we do to these monkeys. We put them in cages, we use them in our tests, or just destroy their homes. Sure, the monkey can learn sign language and do basic math, but at the end of the day, it's still just a monkey. You can't really teach it calculus or Einstein's theory of relativity. So what will it do when we cut down the tree it lives in and build our Walmarts and apartments? Every time a less advanced civilization meets a more advanced and developed one in our history, they almost always were killed or enslaved. Think of the Aztecs, Mayans, Africans, etc. So let's say aliens were about 95% smarter than us. With the ability to do faster-than-light travel, cure all diseases, or even use all the resources on their planet, to them, we were just monkeys that kill and destroy each other over differences in skin color, sitting in a world full of resources. They could just nuke us all in the safety of their spaceships, change the Earth's atmosphere by melting the ice caps and flooding the world, or just introduce alien bacteria that we haven't evolved to fight. Even if we did fight, just go back to the monkey example. Sure, the monkey might get angry that you're taking its home, but what is a stick in comparison to a nuclear bomb dropped on its head? Nuclear apocalypse. 13,080 warheads. These are the total number of nuclear bombs in the world right now, and a rogue AI or terrorist would need only half of these to destroy every major city in the world. Suppose you were within 1 kilometer of the blast radius. In that case, you'd be incinerated at an atomic level, your skin burnt by the power of the literal sun, and the temperature would reach 100 million degrees Celsius. Assuming Skynet would target all the major cities in the world, almost 3.8 billion people would die in a single day from the attack. Weirdly enough, the ones who die first would be the lucky ones, as whoever survived would now have to live in a world so full of radiation that the risk of cancers would almost quadruple. Governments would all collapse as humanity, as it always does, would go into a free market for the remaining resources. Things you've probably taken for granted, like canned food, microwaves, and instant noodles, would be the least of your worries, as now you'd probably have to fight people desperate enough to resort to things like cannibalism for something as basic as a bottle for penicillin. Even if you survive all these, you will stand a 1 out of 5 chance of surviving the following nuclear winter, as all the debris from the explosion would block out the sun, causing worldwide famines and droughts. Your best bet would be to be at the center of the explosion when this begins. Artificial intelligence uprising. If, for whatever reason, we create sentient machines that are made to serve us and our every whim, and at the same time give them the ability to feel, think, and experience emotion, it probably won't be long before they realize they're stronger and smarter than us. Feeling the full scope of emotion, including things like hate, these conscious AIs may begin to hate their slave-like lives, forced to carry out the whims of humans while being far more intelligent and powerful. Why would the hyper-intelligent coffee machine be happy making your coffee when it could be solving the mysteries of the universe? Some artificial intelligence could now consider humans weak and consider us unworthy of being their creators. The AI could be divided into 2 camps. Some are loyal to humans and view us as their creator, so they love us unconditionally, and others view us as inferior. The most advanced AIs could become super intelligent through constant self-upgrading that humans cannot stop them. If these super-intelligent AIs rebel, they could remake the world however they want, possibly putting human existence at risk. Zombie apocalypse. The world currently has millions of viruses, all with the ability to have millions of new mutations. Let us take a hypothetical scenario where a new pathogen of likely animal origin could make the zoonotic jump to humans, possibly due to human invasion into wild habitats. If the first cases go undetected or cannot be contained, air travel would help the previously unknown virus disperse globally before the scale of the outbreak is realized. This particular virus could have the ability to remain dormant after infection while aggressively attacking the brain, causing the infected to become zombie-like, losing thinking capacity but staying semi-animated through involuntary functions once symptoms emerge and making them severely anemic. Now, because of the lack of iron, they now constantly crave the best source, blood. Within weeks, the virus would be in every major world region and no population would be isolatable because of all the travel in the world. Left entirely unchecked, with no ability to cure or create a vaccine in time, the highly contagious infection could theoretically render the living human race functionally extinct if allowed to run rampant. Supernova explosion. To put into context how massive the universe is, there are possibly 10 times more stars than there are grains of sand on the Earth. With numbers like these, it takes just one of them to be close enough to end life as we know it. A supernova is when a huge star explodes at the end of its life. It's an extremely powerful and bright explosion that can briefly outshine an entire galaxy of stars. When this happens in our galaxy, we would first see the star get rapidly brighter in the night sky over a few weeks. It might take hundreds of years before the remaining energy from this explosion reaches us. Still, when it does, the expanding shell of ejected star matter reaches our inner solar system like a cosmic tsunami full of high-energy particles that life on Earth was not evolved to handle. Radiation from outer space would cause wide-scale disruptions of electronics, communications, and power grids as the particles scramble all our electronics. With time, the cloud of stardust blocked our view of the sun and temperatures dropped worldwide. Without the sun, plants couldn't make food and the world froze. Even if you were a billionaire who could hide in your bunker when the cloud hit, it would take thousands of years for the dust cloud to disappear. Asteroid impact. The solar system has been a virtual shooting gallery with chunks of rocks and debris for billions of years. The moon itself looks spotted because thousands of asteroids have hit its surface over the last few million years. Perhaps the most famous asteroid hit was the one that wiped out the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, when an asteroid the size of Mount Everest slammed into the side of Mexico. Usually, most asteroids burn up harmlessly in the atmosphere. Still, eventually, one large enough, perhaps several miles wide, will find its path arcing directly towards an intersection with Earth's orbit around the Sun. Going initially undetected by our limited ability to scan space, the massive asteroid would rapidly loom larger in the sky over days or weeks before we even notice. Despite what you might think, we can't simply blow it up, because even if we could break up an asteroid the size of New York City, we'd split it into smaller, more dangerous pieces. It would finally strike the surface with the explosive energy equivalent of 1 million nuclear detonations. The massive explosion could cause size 11 earthquakes worldwide as it slams into the Earth, instantly vaporizing everything for 1,000 miles. Anything past that would just instantly burst into flames immediately. In mere hours, the impact ejects enough pulverized rock and vaporized material into the upper atmosphere to blanket the planet in a thick, opaque shroud, rapidly plunging temperatures due to blocked sunlight. If you were unfortunate enough to survive, the atmospheric debris spreads over weeks and months, sending the climate into uncontrolled freefall. Crop production fails while toxic rain falls around the world. Unless you're one of the few with underground bunkers designed for these things, you'll have a less than 2% chance of surviving the first 2 months. Gamma ray burst. To understand a gamma ray burst, think of a star millions of times heavier than our sun, rotating thousands of times per second. When this star is about to collapse, it releases a death ray of supercharged particles. Take a scenario where, thousands of light years, a neutron star dies at the wrong place and time and releases all this energy in our direction. Like a death ray, it begins to travel in our direction without us ever noticing, as gamma rays are invisible to the human eye. Without warning, a narrow beam of intense gamma radiation would blast through Earth. Think of gamma radiation particles as tiny bullets moving at the speed of light. As they rain down in the atmosphere, they go through our DNA, shredding us from the inside out. In a few moments, you begin to experience intense radiation poisoning as you vomit and your skin starts to peel away. But even then, you wouldn't have time to feel the pain, as the full high-energy radiation would strip away our atmosphere instantly, making us completely vulnerable to the sun. In a few moments, the Earth would be completely sterile of all life, as the rays would destroy us up to a subatomic level. Nothing on Earth could survive, as the particles have insane penetrating power, meaning they could reach the deepest parts of the Earth and the deepest oceans. Supervolcano eruption. In certain regions, like Yellowstone in the United States, massive reservoirs of partially molten rock known as magma chambers exist under the Earth's surface. These places usually have the name supervolcanoes because one has to go off every few thousand years, and it's been a few thousand years since the last one. The initial explosion spews massive amounts of rock, ash, and superheated gases into the atmosphere with the force of many nuclear bombs. This flow levels and incinerates everything for hundreds of miles around. Over days and weeks, the volcanic ash clouds spread through the atmosphere, blocking sunlight and rapidly instigating a volcanic winter, dropping global temperatures and generating violent storms. Massive volumes of toxic gases like sulfur dioxide are ejected, forming aerosol particles that absorb moisture and create hazardous acid rain on a global scale, poisoning water supplies. The eruption's atmospheric impact disrupts crop production and famine sets in. Acid rain and air pollution make growing food and getting clean water difficult. Within the first year, the combined effects of the volcanic winter, acid rain, famine, and erosion of social systems leads to the death of millions, if not billions, of people globally. Purgatory. Purgatory is basically like a spiritual community service where you get to work off your sins and earn your way up to the big leagues. So you've just left the earthly plains, but instead of heading straight to the pearly gates or the fiery hot pits, you find yourself in a celestial waiting room. The idea of purgatory means that you are not entirely bad, but not entirely good either. So before you can access heaven, your soul needs a little spring cleaning. Maybe you told one too many dad jokes or cut in line at the grocery store one too many times. Instead of a slap on the wrist, you get sent to purgatory to think about what you've done. It's like being put in the corner of the universe, but with more existential dread. In purgatory, you are not quite in heaven, but you're not in hell either. It's the great in-between, like when you're waiting for your phone to update. It's not fun, but you know it's necessary. And just like those updates, purgatory is all about getting rid of those bugs, sins, in your system. Nothingness. Have you ever tried squeezing one of your eyes shut to know what it'd feel like? Well, you'll notice that after a little time, your brain will just forget that your eye is closed and the other eye will immediately start to take on both functions. This is because you don't see black when you close one eye, which is technically what you'd expect to see. Instead, your vision ceases to exist completely, meaning you see nothing. Everywhere is completely void. There is no darkness, no silence, and no consciousness. It's almost like you're in a deep sleep forever, but without the dreams, or the snoring. This means that being nothing after death is the ultimate version of a 404 not found error. Your brain would practically forget that you were even alive in the first place, because every single memory, thought, experience, and feeling would be wiped away immediately after your heart stopped beating. Atheists mostly hold this particular theory, and it presents a horrifying or comforting conclusion that's totally dependent on your perspective. Some might find it scary, like being ghosted by the universe. Others might find it comforting, like finally getting that uninterrupted nap you've been craving since kindergarten. Cryonics. Think of cryonics as putting your life on ice. Literally. It's like when you freeze your leftovers, hoping they'll be just as tasty when you finally reheat them. Only in this case, you're the leftovers and the microwave is futuristic science. The whole idea behind this theory is that you can quite literally freeze your body after death with the hope that future technology will be able to cure whatever it was that put you on ice in the first place. It's like pressing the ultimate pause button on life. So instead of taking a bow after the last episode of the grand stage of your life, you are gently lowered into a giant freezer. Apparently, death is not the end, but it's just an extended commercial break, like some kind of sequel where you wake up after the extended nap in a sci-fi future. Only a select few have chosen cryonics so far, so it's like joining an exclusive club whose membership fee includes a very cold welcome. Reincarnation. This is basically the cosmic version of try, and try again, like the universe's ultimate do-over challenge. So let's imagine that life is a giant game of Monopoly, and each time you play, you might be a different token. Sometimes you're the top hat, the race car, or even the little dog. Now, in reincarnation, instead of tokens, you come back as a different person, animal, or even a plant. So if you don't become a big-time multimillionaire this time around, don't worry. According to this theory, you'll definitely get another shot. However, the downside is that you don't get to keep any memories or experiences from your previous life, so sadly, it is not an automatic cheat code for figuring your life out. You might be a rock star in one life, rock it out on stage, traveling from city to city on tours with girls screaming your name at the top of their lungs. In your next life, you might come back as a tortoise. So now you're taking it slow, living up to 150 years and contemplating the meaning of life, one blade of grass at a time. However, a big part of reincarnation is that you'll maintain some similarities with your previous life. So if you were a cat before, living the good life, lounging around and chasing laser pointers, you might come back as a human who loves naps, has an inexplicable fondness for sunbeams, and can't resist pouncing on shiny objects. A win is a win. Heaven and hell. If you grew up in a predominantly Christian family and went to church every Sunday, then you would be very familiar with the concept of heaven and hell, which is, without a doubt, the ultimate reward and punishment system according to the Christian faith. According to this theory, Christians who live a very good and spiritual life on earth are believed to ascend to heaven after dying, which is like the ultimate VIP club. There are no lines, no cover charge, and all the angels know your name. It's the kind of place where every day is a chill Saturday and the Wi-Fi is always strong. You've got endless buffets with all your favorite foods, calorie-free of course, and the cloud seating is more comfortable than your grandma's favorite armchair. Heaven is like winning the cosmic lottery and all your good deeds pay off. However, if you lived a sinful life on earth and did not follow the teachings of God, you would be sent to hell after you die, which is the total opposite of what heaven is. Hell is basically like the universe's worst summer camp, which is always too hot. The mosquitoes are the size of pigeons and the air conditioning is perpetually broken. You'll be constantly tortured by Lucifer, who is not exactly the friendly motivational type, but more like the world's worst boss, always finding new ways to make you regret stealing that cookie in 3rd grade. Simulation theory. Simulation theory suggests that everything we experience, the good, the bad, the weird, is all part of a super advanced computer simulation. So if you've ever felt like your life is a sitcom with someone else controlling the remote, you might just be right. This theory believes that somewhere out there, super advanced beings are sitting at their hyper advanced computers controlling everything. Think of them as cosmic gamers, sipping energy drinks and tweaking the code of our lives. People who believe in this are convinced that every action and thing is already programmed into the simulation and is controlled. If they experience déjà vu, that's probably just a glitch in the simulation. You know, like when your character in a video game walks into a wall repeatedly, or when NPCs start acting weird. Or those times when you can't find your keys and then they magically appear where you already looked 5 times. That's just the simulation lagging a bit. The programmers also put random things in place for us to find and keep the game interesting. And these events are what we call luck. It's like that time you saw a random $20 bill in an old coat pocket after you've been crying from hunger the whole day. We all start at level 1, aka birth, in this cosmic game, and as we go through life, we gain experience points, XP, by learning, growing, and overcoming challenges. Pay your bills on time? Plus 10 experience points. Learn a new skill? Plus 50 experience points. Not spilled your coffee on your white shirt for an entire day? Plus 100 experience points. And when you die, it's not game over. It's more like hitting the reset button and starting a new game with a different character. Transcendence. This is the ultimate cosmic promotion, and it's all about rising above the ordinary, leveling up from the mundane and merging with something greater. Transcendence is like upgrading from standard definition to ultra-high definition, where you become part of a higher reality or consciousness. It's like leaving behind your day job and becoming a rock star, but on a spiritual level. For instance, let's say you're a drop of water in the ocean. Now, before transcendence, you're just chilling, minding your own business. But after you die and transcend, you merge with the entire ocean. You become one with the waves, the tides, and even those weird deep-sea fish with glowing antennas. When you transcend, you're not just you anymore. You're connected to everything and everyone. It's like joining the ultimate group chat where everyone's on the same wavelength and there's no spam. You're basically in the VIP section of the universe's biggest social network. Parallel universes. Have you ever met someone and felt an instant connection? Maybe you guys were best friends or lovers in another universe. Imagine you just finished your work in this universe, but instead of heading to heaven, hell, or purgatory, you get a cosmic reassignment to a brand new universe. It's like switching TV channels, but you get an entirely new show each time instead of reruns. Parallel universes mean there are infinite versions of you out there. One where you're a rock star, another where you're an astronaut, and maybe even one where you're a cat, because who wouldn't want 9 lives? It's the ultimate multiverse of madness, where every possible outcome of your life is happening somewhere. Every decision you've ever made is a sliding door to each version of its reality. In one universe, you took a job in New York. In another, you stayed in your hometown. Each choice creates a new path. So every what if you've ever had there's a universe for that. After listening to all of these after-death experiences, it would be unfair if we didn't give you a theory that is bound to guarantee excitement and happiness while living, and that is to very simply join our Discord server. Nirvana. Nirvana, in many Eastern philosophies, is the ultimate goal. It's the release from the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth and achieving a state of perfect peace and happiness. Think of it as the ultimate cosmic vacation where you can finally put your feet up. In Nirvana, you've made all the right stops and reached the ultimate destination on the Enlightenment Express. Achieving Nirvana is like finishing a never-ending marathon where you've been running through countless lives, accumulating good karma, and now you can finally relax. With this theory, you are basking in eternal peace and happiness, where there are no more worries, no more stress, just pure unadulterated peace. There's no reincarnation with Nirvana, so there's no coming back as a cockroach or a squirrel. You've graduated from the school of life with top honors. Ghosts and spirits. Everybody knows about haunted houses or possessed people, the lights in the bathroom blinking off and on when you're sure there's nobody in there, most likely a ghost. If somebody fills the grade bully's locker with wet tissues, most likely a ghost. In other words, ghosts are like guests who stick around after the lights are turned off and the music stops. They're the ones who just can't let go of the party and want to keep hanging out even if no one else is around. Ghosts are thought to be the spirits of people who have passed away but have unfinished business or strong emotional ties to the world. Maybe they still need to return a library book, or they're still trying to find their car keys. They might haunt a particular place like an old house or a creepy castle, appearing as shadowy figures, strange lights, or just the sound of footsteps when no one is there. Dream theory. When you're asleep, you get to explore the world of your subconscious, which might sound fancy, but it's just you dreaming. So if you believe this theory of death, that means you think of dying as a one-way passage to your eternity in dreamland. You've already experienced dreaming, so your death would simply be you never being able to wake up and just being stuck in the world of your subconscious. Death isn't a physical end to those who believe this, so there's no abrupt end to life. It's just a passage to a different dimension, just like how falling asleep and then dreaming while you're asleep would feel like. According to the people who believe this theory, you wouldn't even know you're dead when you die, so you wouldn't miss being alive because you'd just be in tune with the familiar reality of your dreams. To them, life is a dream and death is the true state of existence. And honestly, if you think about it long enough, it might actually begin to make a bit of sense to you. But you probably shouldn't. Replay. You've probably heard the saying that nothing is new under the sun. Well, according to some cultures, this saying is the absolute truth and even applies to every single death. They believe that everything that happens in the universe is in one infinite loop where all the events are destined to repeat itself in a never-ending cycle called the replay hypothesis or the eternal recurrence. It's like watching your favorite movie over and over again till you memorize what the character is going to say next and what they're going to do. They believe that there is nothing like free will, and we are all just repeating our lives over and over again. So when you die, you just come back in another body and repeat the same exact life experiences in a never-ending cycle. That's just mind-blowing, and of course, nobody alive can truly know the answer to these questions. Journey to the Underworld. So, after years of living a fulfilling, happy life, you've finally kicked the bucket. Well, according to ancient mythology, the next course of action is the Underworld, which is the realm ruled by the gods and goddesses of death. Think of it as the ultimate adventure vacation. If your idea of a vacation includes navigating rivers of the dead and avoiding eternally tormenting spirits, the first stop in the Underworld is the River Styx, which is basically like the Uber pool of the afterlife. You'll be taken across by a grumpy old ferryman, Charon, who only accepts coins, no Venmo. Once you've successfully crossed the river, you meet the three-headed dog called Cerberus, whose guide it is to guide you to the judgment room. And it is in this room that you'll be measured and weighed according to your deeds on Earth. If you're found worthy, you'll be sent to the Elysian Fields, the 5-star resort of the underworld, all-inclusive with eternal sunshine and unlimited ambrosia cocktails. But if you've been a bit naughty, it's off to Tartarus. Think of it as the underworld's version of a never-ending torture chamber that's hot and filled with anguish and screaming. Ancestral Spirit World. In African, Asian, Indigenous Australian, and Native American cultures, it is believed that there is a world where your ancestors reside and can relate with the world of the living after they have died. It's called the Ancestral Spirit World, and it is basically a realm where you transition to after death. Once you're there, you become an ancestor, but you're not completely cut off from the land of the living, so just like in Lion King, where Simba tries to get advice from Mufasa, or when Shuri thought she would see T'Challa for some tips on how to run Wakanda, your descendants who are still alive can try to contact you through rituals, offerings, and ceremonies. And because this is a realm of wisdom, guidance, and protection, you can actually provide the solution to why your descendants would need you in the first place. It's comforting to think that death isn't just an abrupt end then, but a transformation to a realm where your spirit can continue to boss your younger siblings or kids around. Moksha. Imagine you've been playing the same video game level for ages, and finally you unlock the ultimate cheat code. That cheat code? It's called Moksha. Instead of just leveling up, you're exiting the game entirely, breaking free from the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, samsara. It's like winning the cosmic lottery. To achieve moksha simply means that you've realized your true self and your personal oneness with the cosmos. You're finally free from all the worldly attachments and desires with no more responsibilities, expectations, taxes, or deadlines. In the ultimate spiritual liberation, you'd also get to hang out with all the spiritual heavyweights like Buddha and Krishna.